Hey guys, this is National Master Kevin Yang back at it with another video. So this game is against NiceChessD. This is still last week's analysis, so let's get into it. E4, knight f6, and e5. So this is what is called the Alekhine's defense, or what some people call the Alekhine, or I don't know, it's named after the world champion Alexander Alekhine, who is very famous for his aggressive style, but plays some very interesting moves as well. So after knight d5, d4, d6, knight f3. So this is the main line of what to do against the Alekhine defense. Then bishop g4 comes, and here I've played this position many times before. One time I played c4, one time I played bishop to e2, one time I played h3, but I chose in the game to play bishop to c4, and this was solely out of tricks. Here's the reason why. Knight b6 leads to bishop takes and knight g5 with the idea of queen takes g4. So that's what I was hoping for, right? There's also c6, e6, there's pawn takes e5, they all work. Here our friend NiceChessD played the move e6. I played h3. Take, and now knight c6. And at this point in the game, I'm sort of like, I don't like my position. And I guess this is partially due to the fact that this pawn is so extended. You know, all my pawns are back here, and there's this one pawn looking forth, right? But it's not doing much. So I played queen g3, and here I sort of looked at my position after a move like knight d4, and I sort of regretted it right away because, to be honest, I didn't like my position, right? I did have other alternatives. I could have played queen to e4 for sure, probably a better alternative because now black does not have knight d4, right? So for example, bishop c5 happens, knight d2, knight to b3. White is okay, but there's no sort of advantage. And here I'm just trying to develop. I'm not trying to get any advantage or anything. So if queen g5, there's knight to b3, right? Just in case if you were wondering. So queen to e4 was a better approach, but I played queen to g3. And after knight d4, I contemplated at this move bishop to d3, because I saw the move right away knight b4. And I was like, okay, well, the only way to put another guard on this is either move the king here, move the king here. So if I move the king here, they have knight takes c2, right? And I can't take back because, well, there's a pin. The same thing happens for king d2. Knight takes c2, and there's a pin. So I can't do that. So I'd have to play the move knight to a3. And then in this position, knight takes d3, queen takes d3, bishop takes a3, and if queen takes a3, knight takes his fork, so pawn takes a3, queen to d5. This pawn's looking terrible. My pawn structure's looking all bad. That's okay if I yawn. So b takes a3, and just queen d5, and you see how bad my pawn structure is? You know, it's like pawn, 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 and they're all over the place, but they're not so organized like black's pawns are. So in my thinking, I said, I cannot allow for this to happen. So instead of playing bishop to d3, I played bishop to b3. Now you might be like, what difference does this make if knight to b4 happens again? Well, after knight to a3, this knight no longer takes the bishop on d3. If knight takes on b3, I have pawn takes on b3, and there's really no way to move the knight without without keeping an eye on this c2 pawn. Because I think although the c2 pawn is extremely important, right, and black needs to keep an eye on that, there is no way to do it if the knight moves. So that's just a benefit. So there I showed you the difference between bishop to d3 and bishop to b3. Makes a big difference, I know. Even though you saw that black's response to the moves is the same, the sort of variation that continued changed a little bit. So in the game, knight f5 happened, and here I felt a little bit better about my position because, you know, I have the bishop pair, right? And in open positions, the bishop pair is always a plus. Here I could have played queen to f3, I could have played queen to d3, I could have moved my queen to g4, could have moved my queen to h2, but I chose queen to d3. And I guess this mainly stemmed from the fact that this knight, I want to prevent it from coming to d4 again. So after bishop b4, I played c3, and after bishop c5, I was for a moment, I was like, whoa, I can do this. Like, I can win a piece. So I did it. I took it. And at this moment, I was a bit puzzled with my position because, you know, although I liked my position, was I supposed to trade right away, right? Was I supposed to do that right away and allow, let's say, pawn takes d5? Oh my. See? Chess players are tired. So back into the game, I was just thinking, did I really need to give up my bishop pair for that? Right? Because black has like queen e4 maybe. Black has like the edge in development, right? So when taking a look into those factors, I was like, let's get another piece out instead of trading right away. Let's get another piece out. So knight d2 happened, and here it gets a little complicated because black has this move knight f4, and all of a sudden I have to really think about how I'm defending my position, right? Because if I play king f1, knight d3, and after knight f3, well, knight takes, knight takes, knight takes. And black is back in business somewhat. So this queen really has nowhere to go, right? So g3 has to be another something that I think about. And then after something like knight takes, pawn takes, f takes, right? Do I go queen g1? Is that going to be how it works? So I just have to think about the kind of things. But knight f4 I think is a pretty strong move. I don't know at the moment how to defend against it. I mean, it's clear the d3 square is one thing, but the g2 pawn is another threat. So I could play bishop to c2 here, but after knight takes, king f1, I mean, there's probably a lot of ways to do it. Maybe just knight back to f4, knight to e3 maybe could be, because the knight can come to g3 once this pawn takes the knight. But they're just, I don't know, I feel like I do partially regret my decision not to trade. But at the time, my judgment was fixated on, you know, my pieces aren't as developed as these guys. So what I need to do is I need to start throwing them out. And I think part of that is, you know, looking at this e4 square, right? The queen is coming to e4, so I need something to defend it, but I need it to also develop. So I played knight d2, and now knight to e3 happened. This was another one of those scary moves that I wanted to avoid. So I played rook g1. I glanced over at it. I said, what about g3? Right? Knight takes g3, f takes, queen takes, king e2, queen g2. I mean, I'm not sure who's better here, right? But let's say Queen takes e3, knight takes h1, knight e4. This could be an alternative, although I don't think I spotted it this far. When I saw knight takes h1, I was just like, black may be getting back in the game with material, so let's just move on. That was my thought in the game. But what I can see now is from the analysis that we're doing, right? Knight takes h1, this knight has nowhere to go. So essentially this is a dead rabbit. But I should have thought that through much deeper. So in the game, rook g1 happened. I played it safe. Rook d8, and now I saw my window. g3. Queen takes, f takes, and this move e4. It's very important that I have this move e4 because I get to bring my queen back and just provide support. Rook d3, bishop c2. Now I'm just providing support with my other pieces. Queen h4, and if I play bishop takes d3, our friend NiceChessD has a quick trick up the sleeve. Knight takes e4, check, and threatening the queen. So after queen h4, I played queen f2, just simply saying you have no more discovered. So after rook to e3, I said queen takes, knight to h1, interesting, king to e2, queen to g5, just looking for a queen trade, looking for a checkmate, queen to f2, king to d1, g6, and now rook takes knight, rook d8. This would be a really good move if the queen were on, let's say, g4. This would be a move that puts pressure. But unfortunately, the rook hangs, and after king g7, what I would do is I would trade queens because, well, the point is when you're up material, you trade. So in this game, what really went wrong for NiceChessD? I think the opening from NiceChessD, it was brilliant, right? Knight d4, and I kind of felt like maybe knight f5 was not necessary. The knight on d4 is probably more powerful than the knight on f5 simply because there's this reach towards c2 and this collaboration with the other knight to b4. And I guess I'm not sure if bishop b4 was the best square to develop the bishop because I feel like if bishop c5 was played, well, no, not bishop c5, queen to b5 is there. I would say c6, and the thing with c6 is that it's protecting the knight, and it's sort of preventing against this queen to b5. So that's just a thing to consider, right? Queen to d3, bishop to b4. Now, this move gives me the tempo to play c3, right? So in addition to all you saw about that, c6, bishop c5, there'd be no queen b5. Here, well, there's no queen b5 again, but by playing c3, I think this helps me more than it hurts me because I get to transfer this bishop to c2, and there's ideas of looking at h7. So I might play g4 one day. So indeed, I think provoking the move c3 helps me out. And winning the bishop certainly helped me out. And here I do really hope to trade next time. Knight g3 or knight d to e3. I should have played g3 and just really thought about it. Rook g1 was also good. And then I was able to do with the things I did, right? Get those things, queen to g5, king to d1, get the pieces, and that was the game, but it was surely much more complicated than I originally intended it to be, right? It started from my unwise choices in the opening, and all those decisions spiraled into a very complex middle game. So, hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you next time.